Mabuhay, everyone. This is Reverend Reg, and today is Sunday in Manila, Philippines. It's July 18, 2021, and it's actually 15 minutes past the hour of 12. So it's 12:15 noon actually here. Today I'm very excited because over the years I've had clients who are in show business, and it's a very fascinating industry to get into, but a lot of things can also be very confusing for people who get into it, especially if you don't have your personal relationship with source as your foundation. So, I'm very happy because one of my colleagues in University of Metaphysics is also an actor and a metaphysical minister. And just to read to you some of his amazing background, Reverend Vincent Banks, our guest today, is a spiritualist, artist, and entrepreneur from Gary, Indiana. Through his lyricism, humor, and visual artistry, he attempts always to bring attention to perspectives often either overlooked or generally outside the scope of mainstream consciousness altogether. He holds a bachelor's of Fine Arts degree in acting from the Theater School of DePaul University, as well as a Bachelor's of Metaphysical Science in University of Sedona. So without further ado, let's give Reverend Vincent Banks a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome.
Namaste.
Namaste. And I want to greet you mabuhay in the Philippines. It means live and go beyond existing. So
Mabuhay.
yeah, awesome. Thank you for affirming it as well. So, Reverend Vincent, I want us to start with a breathing and just a reflection on Reverend Shirley Lawson's book. So, let's gently close our eyes, feel our breaths as if they're coming from the heart, and just feel grateful for something in our lives right now, whatever that may be. Maybe it's a caring family member or something really nice that happened to you. Just focus on it while you're breathing through the heart and just connect to that inner smile in your heart, which activates your inner peace. When you are ready, you may gently open your eyes. Awesome. So today I want us to pick an inspiration from Reverend Shirley Lawson's book. And this is for Reverend Vincent Banks to reflect on, and he'll give us his reflection. Giving up one attachment for another is not the way to find the true self. All right. So go ahead, Reverend Vincent. What do you think about it?
Giving up one attachment for another.
Yes, it's not the way to find one's true self.
Hmm. Yes, because another attachment is just another form of material nature, illusion, what we call Maya, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're giving up one form of Maya for another.
Mm-hmm.
Either way you cut it, it's putting you in illusion, right?
Yes.
And it's not the way to find the true self. The true self is it transcends all illusions, transcends Maya altogether. It's out of the mode of ignorance, outside of the mode of passion, even outside of goodness. A lot of times people do things in goodness and they're attached to being good. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
maybe reverends or ministers are attached to being good, but if you're attached to being good, there's pride in that, there's
Mm-hmm.
ego in that. So yeah, we've got to let go of it.
Amazing. So, I think it's really perfect for an actor, that particular nugget from Reverend Shirley Lawson, because I know with actors, you will have to go through the diversity of human experience with the different roles that you play. So, when did you start becoming an actor? Were you first an actor prior to studying metaphysics, or was it metaphysics first before you became an actor?
I became an actor in the sixth grade.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yes. I went to a performing arts school, so we had majors, and I was a drama major. Um, I had auditioned for strings, art, visual art, and acting.
Mhm.
And I only got in for acting, and I wasn't even well prepared. And I actually told my teacher years ago, years after I had gotten in, I'm like, I don't know how I got in. I did really poorly. He was like, I got you. I'm the one that put you in the program. And thinking back, it was just I'd improved it, but there must have been that natural instinct he saw, that what they call it, perhaps is what he saw.
Awesome. Wow, I'm so amazed that you started that early because that training will definitely help you a lot in your professional life as an actor. So, how does it feel like being an actor, especially in the States? How is it there?
Um, well, I've not acted any other place, so I don't have any point of reference, comparison. But it's rigorous. It is competitive. There's often a notion of you have to be a struggling artist. You have to be ready to to go to live with nothing, next to nothing. And I was ready for that. When I was in high school, I was actually excited about that aspect. I said, I'm going to be a struggling artist, and I'm just going to make it. I'm going to go out, and I'm going to not have much money, but it's going to be good. I'm going to really relish it. And it didn't actually happen that way. Um, I never intended on going to college, but I ended up going to college
Mhm.
for acting. Um, and that was very rigorous. Yeah, it's the rigor is what it is. And not getting lost in the shuffle. I mean, you got to really be consistent. Consistency is key. And bring your A game every time. Treat every role as if it is the role, and treat people with the utmost respect. Anyone you meet, I don't know how some actors get up, in the higher echelon of you know, business, the industry. And I don't know how anyone can make it to be disrespectful. I'll put it that way. Very hard to get that way.
Amazing. So anyway, when you talked about rigor, because here in the Philippines, one of the things I picked up from my client who's also an actor, she was saying, here in the Philippines, there's a mix of theory and then there's a mix of that practical application. So how is it in your school? Because uh, things might be different with how things are done there and how things are done over here.
Oh, no doubt. There are a lot of different techniques and a lot of different schools of acting. Um, you got Meisner people, you've got Stanislavski people. Without getting too far into them, they're different methods, and they're different ways of learning lines, different ways of dropping them in, different ways of getting into character. And you have all these tools, at least in the theater schools, what I've learned. You have all these tools to use. They're at your disposal to use whichever ones work for you best in any given situation, right? At one point, this certain tool might work best for you, but you may be, thrust into another situation where you've got to do it a little different. So it's being exposed. Exposure, that's another big thing in acting, is being exposed to many different life experiences, many different circumstances from which you can draw inspiration. You can draw, fodder for that creative impulse.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And let's talk about the lifestyle, Reverend Vincent, because we both know that, when things are going very well and you're in momentum, It's easy to enjoy and actually just get into that space where you're in a hypnotic rhythm. You don't really see your spiritual, uh, your spiritual foundation as something that actually led you to what particular success you might have, especially when things are going very well. So, for you, what can you say about it? Because we know that there are so many popular actors and very wealthy actors, but they may be wealthy in fame and money, but it's also different when you talk about wealth in terms of inner peace.
Hmm. Well, I would say that most that I'm aware of, they have some sort of spiritual foundation. They've got some sort of, they're firm in their convictions and their faith. Um, People, I'll just say, I'll name a few. Will Smith, for one, he's just read the Bhagavad Gita, and if you listen to his interviews, he's very positive. He's very mindful. Um, Another person, Denzel Washington. Another person who's um, I don't know his particular inclinations. I do believe he's Christian, but again, he's very positive. He lives a positive lifestyle. You've never seen Denzel Washington in the tabloids, uh, because he's focused, right? He's in tune. He knows what he's doing every minute, and he's got a good handle on that. And that's something I've struggled with. Um, that's something I've struggled with. Um, Trying to find that balance between being the doer and not being the doer, because I know I'm not the doer. Uh, but things have got to get done. So it's straddling that line of being in the flow, right? Yeah.
Amazing. And you talked about the flow. So what for you is the flow? Because a lot of people talk about it, but a lot of people also have different explanations for it. So I'd like to hear yours.
Um, I'll take a sip on that one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Being in the flow, I feel is there's another thing in acting. I relate a lot of things to acting because I've done it so long. It's like, acting informs my real life. I take my acting classes, and it tells me how to live life. Um, but there's a thing in acting, doing the next right thing, right? The next organic thing. When you're on stage, you do what's logical. Um, that's and so I relate that to being in the flow, going with what's logical in the next step. You don't have to think ahead too much, right? Um, but being in the moment, being present to the moment, to where you're making that A1 choice in the moment. There we live in an infinite field of potentials, right? And there are innumerable choices one can make at every given moment. But to be conscious, to be um, centered in consciousness, you will make the most favorable decision in every moment. And so that's what I aim to do. And I'm not, sometimes I fall from grace, um, as far as that goes, but I do try my best. Meditation, of course, is great to keep you on track. If you can do that every day, um, in the morning and at night, if you can. There's a saying, um, by one guru. Every morning you should, and I'm paraphrasing. Every morning you should beat your mind with a pair of shoes, and every night before bed you should beat your mind with a broomstick. Right? Get your mind under control.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And it's just so lovely to have you here because you're the first one that guested from University of Metaphysics, and you talked about that different techniques for acting and how being in the moment is necessary for you to draw the next organic thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's what you call instinctive intelligence. You know, your instincts just know what to do. And of course, there's going to be a very big part where the mind will have to trust that particular action because apparently a lot of us are so head brain oriented.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, you do something and then the fear aspect of your brain will just actually make you think about the what ifs, and there are so many what ifs that happens to us every day. So how do you handle that?
Oh man, well that's going back to your when we were talking about attachments, right? You cannot be attached to a certain outcome, right? Of course, we want certain things to go a certain way, but we have to let go. We have to release. We have to surrender to the higher self and trust that the higher self is going to make happen what is best to occur. We are not the doers. We are the experiencers. We are the observers. Um, but we're not doing, right. I could not have put myself here. I, I experienced going through the motions, but um, I feel like I'm losing track of the track you've put me on with your question. Have I answered your question?
You know, I was thinking, how do you handle the fear? I mean, I was asking, how do you handle the fear? Because the our head brain is so accustomed to it has to bring me to a consequence where it's safe.
Hmm.
But when you're so action oriented, you have less time to think about the consequences of what you're doing. You know, when you act and then there's no immediate result yet from that particular action that you took,
Hmm.
the head brain, the fear aspect of it will rise up to make you fearful. What if
No.
this happens? What if this happens?
Yeah, I mean, if that happens, you're not where you need to be. You're not in the present. If you're in the present, it's not going to happen because if you're in the present, you're focused on your action. What am I doing? What is the objective? Is it getting done? How do I get it done? Right? You're
Yes.
taking these steps. That's what your mind is on, right? Or whatever activity you're doing, what they call stage business. If you're sweeping the floor on stage, or if you're sweeping the floor, in frame, that is your action. That's what you're doing. You're not thinking about, anything else. You're looking at that dirt on the ground and you're trying to get it up, right? And if you're multitasking, then that's even more to keep you out of your head, right? One thing my acting teacher used to say, there's nothing in here, right? There's no one's home, right? Get out of here. It's out here. Who are you talking to? Focus on them. And that's a good lesson for in life. People oftentimes when they're in conversation, they're thinking about what they're going to say next, right? And they're in anxiety because they don't want to sound foolish, or
Yes.
they don't want to come across as, however, if they're talking to someone that they're interested in romantically, they don't want to come off as perverted or weird or you know.
Yeah.
So you've got to be present to that person. You're talking to a person, right? They're going to give you
Awesome.
what you need. Your partner, whoever your partner is, whether it's a love interest, your friend, your family, your partner is giving you what you need. They got the gold. Be there with them and receive it, and you can give it right back when you're there. If you're not there fully, you're going to drop it. You're going to drop the ball, and it won't be organic.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And one of our viewers, Dr. Ro Guzman, is saying that she's watching in her place here in Manila.
Oh.
So thank you for sharing that, Reverend Vincent, because it's true. It's funny that you mentioned that, you know, we're so self conscious and then you're thinking about a lot of things, especially if it's someone that you're interested in. And you're analyzing if you're perverted or you're vulnerable in that space. You don't want to look foolish. So, how do you actually handle that? Because even if it's an acting thing that you're talking about, we know that so many things in life, we don't actually demonstrate it because we're so afraid to be vulnerable. We're so afraid to make mistakes.
Hmm. Trust that you've done the work. That's another acting thing. Trust that you've done the work. For instance, I'll be a little vulnerable with you. Um, I was told early on that I have a distinct voice. And so after some time, I became kind of conscious of that, my voice, and I became a talking head. I became a voice actor, and not doing voiceover, but, I would focus on my voice. And I have to trust that I've done the work. I've done my voice work. I do a lot of voice work. Um, and let it go. That's not the focus. If I'm thinking about my voice, I'm not thinking about the right thing. The message is not coming across, no matter how pretty I sound. The message is not being conveyed to the person effectively. And there's no good communication. Just because you sound pretty, that doesn't mean you know how to communicate, right? That doesn't mean you're a good
Exactly.
communicator. So there's a lot more, to that.
Amazing. So, since you talked about communication, we know that it's actually a two-way street,
Mhm.
especially if you're talking to another person. And another thing is talking to a bigger audience. So, I think your training also helped you out to become a more effective communicator as a minister. So, are you doing anything for congregations where you actually do workshops for a big group?
I recently worked at a nursing home, and I was an activity director at a nursing home. And one thing that I did regularly, maybe 3 times a week, I would hold sermons, and I would take a topic. Sometimes I'd take the topic right out of Dr. Masters, the
Mm,
materials, and but sometimes I just came up with it, on the fly, and those were always the best ones when I came up with it on the fly. Um, but yes, I do speak with people, you know, uh, in big congregations. My solo performance is actually, hopefully it'll be big congregations every show we have. But
mm.
that too is very. There's a lot of philosophy in it. A lot of it's chocked full of deep, grand philosophical, what I would say are truths, or just theories maybe, but a lot of Hinduism, magic involved in it. I deal with a lot of different things in this solo performance.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Vincent. And one of the advantages of being an actor, because we know in metaphysics, a lot of people actually get drawn to it because they would like to manifest something. They
Hmm.
want to manifest more money, they want to manifest a car, they want to manifest a partner. Some people, they want to manifest inner peace.
Mm.
So, anyway, Reverend Vincent, please share with us. I'm very sure that you have a lot of tips that you can give us, especially when it comes to demonstrating a goal. And I'm sure acting has served you a lot into playing a part before demonstrating an intention.
Yes. To demonstrate an intention, I become one track mind about it. I almost meditate on it. I meditate on it. I think about it in the shower, and it just becomes. I get a good feeling from just manifesting it in my mind and mulling over it, and just I can taste it, and it just imagining, my desired results. Um, and things have come about from that. Now I was on a kick for some time, um, where I wasn't praying or for anything or trying to manifest anything, um, any personal egoic desires, one might say. Um, and I know, in our training, with the University of Metaphysics and University of Sedona, we are told um, that one who is really spiritually elevated or enlightened should be able to show outwardly their spiritual
Yeah,
prowess,
yeah.
rather than just having it inwardly. There's no reason why someone who is spiritually enlightened or elevated should be should have to settle for being poor, right? Just because you're
Yes,
spiritual
exactly.
doesn't mean you can't have material means. Um, but one thing I would pray for was for my own personal egoic desires to be taken from me, and w- to be given to me would be to be placed in service to the higher self, right? So take my personal egoic desires and um, give me an attraction to being dovetailed into the will of the universe, the will of God, right? And that's what I would pray for the longest. And since then, I've been through a lot of things that I may not consciously have found favorable, but it's what I went
Mm.
through, and it's why I'm here today. You know, a lot of people think the spiritual path is all hunky dory and enjoyable, and you know, there are some things you may go through that, you know, may not be so pleasurable, and not everything is so pristine, right? You could be, one of my mentors told me, you know, you could be face down in a gutter, right?
Yes.
Um, but and find in that same instant, find enlightenment, find the self, right? Become self-realized. So a lot of people think of these people up, you know, sitting in lotus position, and you know, they're fasting, and you know, you may be an alcoholic, you may be, you know, someone that we don't necessarily think of as someone who is spiritually enlightened, or you know, materially well to do, but anyone anyone is anyone, and it can come to anyone, self-realization at any time.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Vincent. And that's such a beautiful prayer to say that you want your personal egoic desires to be taken away from you and then to be in total alignment with the will of God or the universe. So, anyway, I want to ask you, Reverend Vincent, because when we talk about personal egoic desires, it can mean a lot of different things to different people. So, for you, what would you consider personal and egoic desires?
Well, I'll be honest, I would love a wife and kids.
Mhm.
Is it my time to have that? Apparently not, because I don't have it.
Yeah.
um, and so if I were to sit up here and pray for it, I could manifest it most, you know, most definitely. I could sit up here and I could manifest it in any number of ways. I could meditate on it. I could do some conjure work and some hoodoo, and go to the more magic side of things, and make it happen. But would it really satisfy me? Um,
Hmm.
would it be one of those instances where it's be careful what you wish for, right? I get
Yeah.
that, but it wasn't meant for me. But you know, universe is going to give you what you know, law of attraction, right? But that doesn't mean that it's for you. So you know, that's one of those things where I don't pray for that. You know, I may put myself out there, you know, with Facebook dating maybe, but I don't I don't harbor on that. I don't focus on that.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Vincent. But one of the things that I wanted to share with you, I have a minister, Reverend Dr. Catherine Ponder, I think would be her title. And I read her book. One of the things that she was saying, the only reason why we're specifying prayer decrees or prayer intentions in written form, for instance, as she was saying, is that everything is already provided to us by the universe. And she was saying, as far as the universe is concerned, I have already given you everything. So the only reason why we're actually specifying that particular intention is because the thing that we desire is planted to us by God's power and presence within us.
Hmm.
And God doesn't give us a desire that wasn't really meant for us.
Hmm.
And how do you feel about it? Because for me, it has helped me a lot, especially I came from a very fundamentalist religious perspective before I went to University of Metaphysics. So when I was growing up, especially I'm openly gay, I would desire to have a girlfriend. But then because of that religious upbringing, I would feel very guilty about having that desire. And
Hmm.
now that I studied New Thought and metaphysical principles, I realized that God will never give me anything in my heart especially if it's making me feel restless, or it makes you feel that it's a loud message from the universe if it's not meant for you. So she was saying that the thing that you desire is actually God's desire for you.
I can see that. I can see that perspective. But at the end of the day, I feel that desire in and of itself is it leads to suffering. Um, when you're hankering for something, right, and you don't it's not realized in your experience. I don't want to say you don't have it, but it's not you're not experiencing it in the present moment. It may be waiting for you, but you're hankering for it, and you want it, and you're desiring it, and then when you get it, you're afraid to lose it, right? So you're in anxiety about losing it, and then when you do lose it, because everything in this material world eventually is lost, whether by death or just it it's not permanent. Um, then you're lamenting, then you're in suffering. So at every point there is suffering. You're suffering because you're hankering for it. You're suffering because you don't want to lose it once you have it. Then you're suffering because you have lost it. Um, so I try not to harbor desires too much. But I do see what you're saying, that the desire, like what you were getting at being a homosexual, the desire was put in you as part of your dharma in this lifetime, and it's part of who you are, and you are not at fault for that. I myself, uh, I've been pansexual.
Mm.
I've been with trans men, I've been with trans women, I've been with cisgendered women, I've been with cisgendered men. Um, that's a whole other, topic that but as far as, having that desire to be with these people, yeah, it came from somewhere else. We didn't give ourselves these desires, same way we didn't give ourselves thoughts. The thoughts just come.
Yes,
And
yes.
we do with them what we will. Some thoughts are best to let go of. Some desires are best to let go of. And I don't want to draw any correlations. Do not misunderstand me, please. But let's say pedophilia, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's people that are born that way, that they have some sort of desire to be with minors,
Mm.
and it just cannot be, not in our society. And of course, back in older times, you would have a 30-year-old with a 14-year-old and no one thought anything of it. So our rules are changing in society. um, you may have had someone with a 10-year-old, 30-year-old and 10-year-old, and no one thought anything of it. um, so these, I don't want to touch on that too much, but just to say, there are desires and longings put on us that sometimes we do have to let go of. Now, if it's two consensual adults,
Yeah, of
no
course.
foul.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Vincent Banks, because it's true. It has to be two consensual adults, because we both know that, we're not in alignment with what you just mentioned. And at the same time, one of the things that why I'm very passionate about discussing this is because, honestly, for myself, I didn't really get, for example, the career breaks that I wanted until, I was very articulate about that particular topic, because most of the time when people brought up LGBTQ concerns, most LGBTQ don't really get the breaks that they want. They're normally playing secondary roles. In
Hmm.
business, for example, instead of leading an organization, they tend to be in the subordinate level. And please don't get me wrong, because I have high regard for any worker, whatever type of job that you have, as long as you're doing it with dignity and you're very honest about it. That's good, but it's just very different when you know you're capable of accomplishing more, but you're settling for that because your self esteem and your self concept is not at par with your true potential.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the reason why I keep talking about it, because I still have so many people, so many guests that when we talk about these things and we talk about their history, how they were led to University of Metaphysics, how they felt empowered when they began studying metaphysical concepts, so much has changed for them in terms of the level of inner peace, self-acceptance, and what they were willing to do about it in terms of work. So I want to ask you, Reverend Vincent, because you mentioned that you're a pansexual. Uh, was it something that affected your work, and was it something that you were always open about to your family?
Being pansexual, um, I don't believe it's affected my work at all. Many people in theater are homosexual and all types of LGBT, you know, um, identities. Um, but I was always open. I'm a very open person. When I was 18, uh, I came to my family and I said, I'm androgynous. Yeah, I like to portray aspects of masculinity and femininity. I started wearing makeup. I bought most of my clothes from the women's department. There was a time where I was very far left, I guess you could say, because left is, associated with femininity, um, or well, the right brain. Anyway, right brain is more feminine, they say. Anyway, I was more feminine at one point in my life. I had long micro braids. I wore makeup. I had, even skirts and stuff. And I would go out on the train, and people thought I was a female. Um, but I was always open, and I got put out of my house when I was 19. Sorry. I got put out of my house because I did dress this way. And I also told them that I was pansexual too. And you know, uh, I've introduced, boyfriends or what have you. I've never hidden any of that. And it caused me a lot of pain. Um, it'd been much easier had I not done that. And I feel like I myself kind of have a choice. I need to go
Mhm.
down that path of, is it a choice? Is it nature versus nurture? Are you born this
Mm-mm.
way or what have you? I don't want to get into that. I'll just say I myself, I feel like, I have a choice in what I do. Um, I can feel any kind of way. It's what I do that counts. Um, and so I've done lots of things with lots of different sorts of people. Um, and these days, I try to be more heterosexual because I do have a preference for women. But for people that, are totally homosexual, you should not try to force yourself in any kind of way, right? I feel like my life would be easier if I just stayed heterosexual, because I've hurt,
Mhm.
I've hurt a young man. Uh, I've hurt uh, trans women um, because of my sexuality, and I tried to be polyamorous. I thought that would fix it. I tried to be, open relationships, and I still may venture down
Mhm.
that path. Um, because love is, it shouldn't be constricted. It should be shared. I feel it's not like if you love someone, you can't love anyone else the same kind of way. I don't believe that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's a whole. Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for being honest, because like what you mentioned, when you're an actor, you have unorthodox type of relationships. You draw that yourself because basically you're popular and you meet a lot of people. But something that I want to ask you as well, when you have an open relationship, so definitely these people are also open to it. Are they also dating other people because you're in an open relationship?
Well, I've not had any successful uh, uh, situations um, to where I can point to and say, okay, this is how it's done. So I can't really speak to that.
Mm. So you haven't met anyone who was as open-minded as you when both of you talked about having an open relationship.
That is correct. Yeah, I've not met anyone. I've met people that were into open relationships. I just have not been in a relationship with any of them. I've gotten into a relationship and tried to make it open. And, I had a boyfriend and we tried to open the relationship and it didn't. He did it. He tried to do it for me, which wasn't a good, foundation already. He was against it, didn't want to do it, but he tried to do it for me. And yeah, it didn't work out.
Yeah. So anyway, but I love your honesty because one of the things that I learned from my New Thought congregation here in the Philippines when our teacher was still alive, he was saying, if you don't like your partner anymore or you're not attracted to the person anymore, it's still best that you tell the person how you feel. Ask permission if you want to date somebody else or be more intimate with somebody else, then just cheat on the person because we know karma's a bitch. And at the same time, I know you have a show about karma. Please tell us more about it.
Uh, yeah, karmic relief. Yeah. So basically, throughout each lifetime, we rack up karma, right? Whether it's good karma or bad karma, we're racking up these experiences, and there's checks and balances. We've got to we get to enjoy the fruits of our good karma, um, as long as they last, right? And then we'll find ourselves, um, having exhausted those good credits. But then, if we're racking up a bunch of debt through bad karma, then we've got to pay that back. So the premise of this solo performance is, there's a magician, Lamont the Thingamagician, and he makes these thingamajigs, talismans, amulets, all sorts of magical items. And one thing he's made is the Japa Mala beads of karmic relief. Um,
Mm.
and he's made these beads specially to use in tandem with the Mahamantra, the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Um, and because in ISKCON, the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, I've learned that the idea behind chanting is you're purifying the heart of all propensities for sinful reactions, but then you're also purifying all the past karma from millions of lifetimes. And with these beads, we actually go to these past lives and we see the sins that people have done, the karma that they've accrued, and we see these past life personalities. We see them die, and they have to reconcile that karma. And in the end, at the end of their life, they're purified via the Mahamantra.
Amazing. That's nice to hear. So you're just going to chant that mantra and then it has the capacity to neutralize whatever karmic debt you have. Is that right?
That is the idea. That is correct, and that is what they more or less believe. That I've been, from my understanding, you chant Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Three names for God: Hare, Krishna, and Rama, repeated in set permutations. And you're chanting this, and it purifies the heart. It's like it's cleansing you. And one should, when they chant this mantra, you should be in the mood of service, right? Kind of like what we were talking about earlier. Thy will be done. Put me in a
Mm.
position to serve.
Amazing. Anyway, I want to ask you a follow-up question, Reverend Vincent.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that, at least for both of us, we believe in the concept of karma, or what is otherwise known as sowing and reaping.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many people who say, because I belong to this particular group, there's no such thing as karma. But both of us know karma is not a religious experience. It's not just because you belong to a particular group. Karma is just the universal principle of sowing and reaping, action and
Mhm.
reaction. So please explain more about it so that the rest of our audience can understand that principle.
Um, well, I do have to say that yes, karma's a thing. Karma exists, um, but it's only real on a particular level. Now, this is my personal understanding. It's only real on a particular level. Um, if you transcend that level, it doesn't exist for you. And things that are real, they never cease to exist, right? Things that are real are always real on every level. They never end.
Mm,
They never cease to exist. So karma exists and it is real if you're on a particular platform. Just like in ISKCON, they believe in karma, you know, and if
mm,
you believe in it, it's definitely real for you. Um, and whether you're conscious of it or not, that's another thing. Um, but there's always going to be cause and effect. I think the thing is your attention, right? Um, how can you tell the cause from the effect? How can you tell the effect from the cause? And they're one, right? What came
mm,
first, the chicken or the egg? They're one, right? The self is all there is what I'm learning. The self is all there is. So we can make a distinction between cause and effect, but that's duality. That's duality.
mm.
And I'm following more so Advaita, non-duality. Um, but of course, it is there. It is there.
What do you mean you're following non-duality? What does it mean to live that way?
I try and it also incorporates being in the present, um, but not making so many. Hmm, not taking things too personally. Not
Mm,
trying to get outside of the personality, the person. I'm not the doer is a big thing that I say often.
mm,
I'm not the doer, right? I may be experiencing things, and it may, from my perception or someone else's on the outside perception looking at me may say that I did this, but who put me in a position to do it?
mm,
Who
mm,
who, who gave me the thought to do it? Who gave my body the energy to do it, right? I didn't give
mm.
myself the thought. Um,
Awesome.
yeah, so that the self is all there is. That's another thing I say all the time. Trying to look past the distinctions of you are you and I am me, and we are different, we are separate. um I try and look at things more in the totality these days.
Thank you for sharing that. And I want to ask a follow-up question
Hmm.
because you talked about you're not actually the one doing it. You were supplied that particular idea to do it. You were supplied that particular energy to do it.
Hmm.
Of course, it's convenient when the result of that action is glorifying and looks good on you. But if it's something that's going to make you feel guilty and shameful, how do you address it? Is it because of the so called devil? Because we know that for some people, there's that narrative of blaming the devil for the actions.
Yeah, yeah. I don't believe in the devil. uh It's our own lower nature that we have yet to transcend on the human, level, of evolution. We're all trying to evolve. We're all trying to do the best we can, and at any given moment. Um, but there is no one to blame. And to
Mm,
say that there is someone to blame, that is to say that something went wrong. And to say that something went wrong is to put a judgment. And when you're judging, that means you are making a distinction between good and bad, right and wrong. You're making a distinction between, and that's all off of one's own perspective. You know, what's good to me, what's wrong to me, what's right for me, right? That's still ego, right? What do I find favorable? You know, what do I find palatable?
Mm-hmm.
That's still ego, right? Um,
For example, Reverend Vincent, of course, we know Adolf Hitler, for example,
yeah.
in whatever in
I was gonna
whatever way
bring him
you
up
look at it.
actually. Huh?
I mean, I, what did you say?
Oh, I just said I was gonna bring him up actually. So it's, you know,
Mental telepathy.
yes. So what
Go
were you
ahead,
saying about
please.
Adolf Hitler?
Yeah, so I was reading about him and how he actually came to be.
Hmm.
So his parents apparently didn't really have the best living conditions. They grew up in a lot of environment where there was a lot of fear, lack, and doubt. And his father was also very violent.
Hmm.
So I'm very sure that with that kind of atmosphere, it took a toll on on him as well as a child. Especially they were living in a very stressful situation. So I'm sure that a lot of the shock and trauma that he experienced as a child, because we know there's uh, when you experience something, if it's something beautiful, loving, and caring, you are most likely to grow up where you are compassionate, caring, and mindful of other people.
Hmm.
But if you grew up in hard conditions, it's also possible that particular shock and trauma that you experience is how you're going to perceive the world and how you're going to act.
Right.
So, with your metaphysical background, what is your perspective on Hitler, especially with what happened to Germany?
Well, Hitler didn't put himself in those conditions, right? Hitler didn't give himself those parents. Now we can say, you know, people have soul contracts and they agree to play these roles for one another and be like, hey, little Hitler, you know, I'm going to be your parents and I'm going to treat you horribly. And, you know, and you're going to have to experience that, right? But he didn't put, let's just say he didn't put himself in those conditions. It was his karma, right? Perhaps from a past life, from who he was or how he was being in a past life. And reincarnation is also one of those things that is real on a particular level. But um, it was his karma, right? And everything that he did, as if he's the doer. This is tough to tough to say, but everything he did was supposed to happen. Um,
Mm.
all of his quote unquote victims, um, everything happens. I'm just gonna say it. Everything happens for the highest good,
Mm-hmm.
and everything happens. I don't know what more to say. Um,
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. But both of us, we both know that whatever happened to him, yes, Dr. was saying, yeah, Hitler has a soul contract on why he had to play that particular role.
yeah,
And at the same time, I think this is where having metaphysical counselors is also very important for
yeah,
people to release whatever shock and trauma they experienced, growing up, especially if you grew up in hard conditions. Because if not,
mhm,
it's going to translate into other limited and fear based actions
mhm,
uh, that you may fall prey into because you're not aware that your programming growing up is actually causing you a lot of your limitations in having a more balanced and harmonious relationship with other people.
yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
you can't harm the soul. That's the thing about it. No one actually no one actually died in the Holocaust. No soul, no spirit, soul, bodies. I have to say that very, you know, because I don't want to sound. bad. But no spirit souls were harmed in the making of this film we call the Holocaust. Um, but on a human material level, it looks very bad. It is awful experience, very painful for a lot of people. Yes, we acknowledge that. In reality, Hitler was kicking the can down the road. He's going to have to experience that pain, that hurt, all on himself again in a alternate life, a subsequent life. Um, but actually, one thing I mentioned in karmic relief, I mentioned good luck is actually often someone praying for us from either a past, present, future reality, or a realm outside of time altogether, such as the astral plane. Um, and that's actually what we're doing when we venerate figures from the past, or we vilify figures from the past. We vilify Adolf Hitler. Guess what we're doing? Every time we
Mm,
talk bad about Adolf Hitler, it is affecting his actual life from when he lived. It's making him more. You're reaffirming. You're saying, yes, he's an awful man. Guess what? He's becoming an awful man in the past, right?
mm,
We affirm his horrible conditions. We're giving him horrible conditions in the past, just like Jesus. Everyone praises
mm,
Jesus, and Jesus gains a lot of his mystical insight and power from all the worship being done in all the churches across the globe today, 2,000 years after his death. Think of
yeah.
all that. Think of all that potency. All that power. People praising Jesus. He's getting empowered 2,000 years in the past. That's how prayer works. Prayer, it transcends time and space.
Amazing, amazing. Reverend Vincent, you mentioned a lot of thought-provoking statements. It's gonna make a lot of people think outside the box and think about morality, which is a cause for uh, very strong opinions for people. And
Yeah, I know a lot of people won't be happy with some of the things we've talked about, but it is what it is. I'm not the doer. I didn't say these things.
yeah, it's just amazing that you're able to talk about issues that will bring a lot of strong opinions, uh, will draw a lot of reactions, and I don't think I'm as half courageous as you are to bring them up. But I do agree with you, especially when it comes to, having an open relationship. Just telling the person that that's the kind of setup that you want.
Hmm.
Because, for me, I have so much respect for people who are authentic, who made sure that this is what they're capable of giving you in the relationship from the very beginning,
Hmm.
compared to someone who's gonna make you expect a lot, especially if it's a romantic sexual relationship, and then they're not going to keep their word.
Yeah.
So especially you talked about Facebook dating, and of course you're on Facebook. It's a lot easier for you to meet someone here,
Yeah.
especially you're having this interview. So anyway, Reverend Vincent, to wrap everything up, what's that one perspective you want me and the rest of the viewers to hold on to and take action immediately on?
Ooh, that's a big one. Huh. Well, I feel like it's got to be something about the nature of life, in the aspect of we're always here. We've always been here. We were here before. We will be here again. Consciousness and experience is from time immemorial, in perpetuity. It's everlasting. Um, so don't sweat it. Do you? And if you don't get it all done in this life, it'll get done in the next life. It's being done right now in your, in an alternate life, because there are parallel universes. There's another you out there doing it. And if you ever need strength, this is a big thing. If you ever need strength, you can draw strength from your alternate self, right? But in reality, we're all alternate selves of one another. I can look at you and I can draw inspiration from you. Why? Because you are me. That's the self. I'm looking, this whole interview, I've been talking to myself and you've been talking to yourself, right? We look a little different. We've had different experiences, but it's all the self. The self is all there is. I'm sorry, Rev, I can't hear you.
All right. Thank you so much, Reverend Vincent. I had so much fun talking to you, and you're literally expanding my awareness uh,
I
in such
really
a way, that is thought provoking. I know there was a trigger on me. I have to be honest, especially when you talked about kids and adults. You talked about that history. It pulled the trigger on me because before University of Metaphysics, I was a preschool teacher, a grade school teacher. So you know how, well, of course, to us, they're little angels, and you feel like you're just caring for them that way. So we know that what you mentioned earlier is going to bring a lot of strong opinions from people, but it needs to be talked about because it will really expand our awareness.
Mhm.
There are certain things that we don't want to talk about, but we have to talk about it because it's happening,
Yes.
and it's expanding our awareness, especially learning how to be in a place of, ba- finding that sweet spot when you talk to people about where you're going to come together and where you're going to feel you're going to have to agree to disagree. So thank you so much, Reverend Vincent. And one thing that I wanted to ask about that karmic relief. So, for example, in the case of Hitler,
Mhm.
does that mantra apply to that kind of gravity of experience?
Oh yes. Oh yes. All
Oh,
sins. Um, I think there's a. I think in Christianity, it's said that, I'm kind of paraphrasing, but no sin is bigger than another. A sin is a sin, right? No matter how much you sin or whatever, um, it's, there's not different gradations of, if you, and there's no calculations. If I chant the mantra 3 times, it'll get rid of this little sin, of me stealing from the candy store. No, that's the fun of it. It's like, there's one line I say in the show. It's much like the conundrum of the old Tootsie Pop commercials. How many licks does it take to get to the center? The world may never know, right?
yeah.
How many rounds does it take to chant your way to the unadulterated Atma? The world may never know. So you just got to keep chanting, or you just got to keep meditating. You just got to, we're always ever purifying.
Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Vincent, because one of the things that I've discussed with other guests and other LGBTQ people, I put emphasis that I have a perspective that we are made in the image and likeness of God.
Mhm.
And the only reason why we're going to situations where we come from the place of fear, lack, and doubt, and cause circumstances that we say are experiences of sin or sinning, is because we believed in the concept of separation from God.
Mhm.
And the moment that you feel that you're separated from God, then that's the time you make a lot of decisions that are not in alignment with your highest self. What can you say about it?
Oh, I agree 100%. When you feel that separation and you're not in tandem, you're going to start making decisions that are not the A1 plan. You're going to start making decisions that result in the B7 plan, J8 plan. It's not A1, right? Because the universe has everything thought out. There's nothing you can do, not to get too deep into free will, but there's nothing you can do that hasn't is like a choose your own adventure story. You open
Yeah,
one, you've read those before, yeah?
yeah, it's my favorite book growing up.
Yeah, you pick up a choose your own adventure story, No matter what you do, it's all in that book. It's all been predestined. So there is an illusion of free will. The only freedom we have is in choosing how we get to where we're meant to be. But you're going to get
Awesome.
there.
Mm. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Vincent. And another thing that I want to highlight on what you mentioned, especially about choices. So, how does one come up with the best decision for themselves? Because, especially, you talked about you're already, I'm just an extension of you, a reflection from you. So, we know that we can reflect off each other's energy. And
Mhm.
there are times when we're not actually making the very best choices. But if people had the chance to pause, what is your suggestion so that they can come from the place where they're making the highest and best decisions?
Listen, be still. There's no rush. Time is going to keep going on. You don't got to make a decision right now. People are always moving, moving, moving. They got to do, they're reacting, right? They're not responding, they're reacting. And, you know, and not even good instinction, just or intuitively, just impulse, right? Take a step back. You got to view things from the top down, not from the bottom up. We're in this when you're, like Jesus said, um, you know, be in this world, not of this world, right? We're of something higher. That's the perspective we should view everything. Take a step back and up and view it from the top down perspective rather than, in it and down in it to where you're, things are always affecting you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Reverend Vincent. I learned so much. And my takeaway from you today is I really love the prayer that you mentioned. God, take away all my personal ego desires. And I am just open and receptive to your will. Let your will be done
Mm-hmm.
and not mine. So I love that, especially when you don't know how to pray exactly for that very thing that you would like to demonstrate.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Reverend Vincent. And is
Thank you.
the show still ongoing so that we can invite people to come and join you?
Yes, October, it will be going down in New Orleans, Louisiana. We're getting everything together, and it's going to be a most auspicious time.
Awesome, fantastic. And if they want to keep in touch with you, where shall they find you?
You can find me
Or
on
how can they find you?
you can find me
Mhm.
on Facebook, Vincent Banks. You can find me on Instagram, Vincent L Banks. Um, I believe that's all I really use. I use Snapchat too, but you don't need to add me on Snapchat. Um, I got, yeah, that's where I am.
Mhm. All right. So they just have to look for you there,
Yeah.
Vincent Banks on Facebook. All
Mm-hmm.
right. So thank you so much, Reverend Vincent. And,
Thank you.
you know, all right. Satnam, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I trust that you're able to squeeze in a lot of Reverend Vincent's perspective. I love that he talked about God, higher power, whatever concept of source that you have, to take away whatever personal ego desires that you have and replace it with the will of that source, higher power, God, whatever it is that you believe in. Because personally, for me, and I also learned how to affirm statements like that. My life got easier to handle, and I had more fun living it. And especially when he talked about it, doesn't mean that it's going to be a very easy path, but it's going to be a path that's meaningful, fulfilling, and very enlightening. And I just want to remind everyone, for those of you who would like to get a copy of the Golden Spiritual Nuggets, to send a message to Meditative Life Ministries on Facebook, or you can add Reverend Shirley Lawson on Facebook so you can ask for a copy. I think it's a few dollars and I'll ask for the price. Remember, put things in perspective because your perspective shapes your reality. And make sure to act immediately on something that's very empowering you got from the show so that you can make the changes that your heart truly desires. Satnam, everyone, and have fun.